The Uganda we want. Welcome to the program, The Uganda We Want. Greetings to you all who are viewing Dream TV, BTV, and as well listening to us on Impact FM. This is the Uganda we want. Which kind of Uganda do you want to see? Which kind of Uganda do you envision? And I always ask you, where you are, I want you to pause for a minute and say, is this, and ask yourself, is this the Uganda I want to be in? I want to live in? Okay, if you say yes, I'm going to ask you another question. Is this the Uganda you would love your children? Whether you have or not, or you're planning, okay? But is this the Uganda you would love your children to live in when you're gone? Is this the Uganda you want to live for the next generation? Okay, I'm asking you papas, okay, you're in your 60s, 70s, okay? The sun is almost setting. It's no longer rising, no, it's setting. It's setting for you. So is this the Uganda you would really love to live for the next generation? Now, if not, the question comes in that defines this program. Which kind of Uganda do you envision? Well, in the program today, this is our second episode with Professor Vincent Kakembo. He's with us again for the second episode. In the first episode, he highlighted more on the education because he believes that if we really work and bridge all the gaps, the loopholes that are in our education system, he says this doesn't actually help Uganda alone, but the entire world will benefit more. So we have him again. He's the Vice Chancellor of Mutesa I Royal University. And in the first episode we got many, comments, and some of you, his, students, you are viewing this program, and you actually sent out comments on the YouTube channel. Others were, trying to say, okay, how can I get to Mutesa I Royal University? And I hope the team there is trying to help you out. So please, before I go into what brought us to your screen today, let me ask him to greet us and say hi to you, and then we'll start off from there. Professor, you're welcome once again.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me again.
I actually would say thank you for having Dream TV again to your home.
Okay, please.
Yeah.
And good day to you viewers. It's a pleasure to really, interact with you once again. To our viewers, the listeners, I greet you all. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I'm grateful for the opportunity once again.
Okay. I want to confirm someone is from Ethiopia. He's a friend of mine, sent me something that he read about you from one of our newspapers. It was Friday, October 25th, 2024. And he says, when you get a chance to meet Professor again, he said Prof again, ask him, did he really say he has been lucky with whatever he lays his hands on? So he wanted a confirmation. Sir, I've asked your question, so let's hear from Professor if that is true. Did you really say that?
Well,
and what did you mean?
Okay, that's very interesting. Yes, I could say yes. I'm lucky, I think, but that luck needs to be put in context. You know, you don't just sit there and then luck meets you or something like that. As is said in our local, the saying goes in our local language, luck goes with those that are prepared for it. You really need to predispose yourself to, getting things done, luck meeting you, and then it will happen. And actually, I like it, our Katikiro, the Prime Minister, also mentions it all along. That yes, you could be lucky, but I mean, it's your level of preparedness that will determine how that lack, pans out. It could come as lack, but when you're not prepared, you miss out on the opportunity. You miss out on the lack. You resist whatever graces come to you, and then you miss the chance. So you must be prepared to take up that.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you for putting that in context for us.
In that regard, then I would say that I was really prepared to take up whatever like a stance did come my way. Yes, thank you.
So when you're actually saying when you're prepared, so you're able to lay your hands on anything.
Absolutely.
You can, impact the world, impact communities, influence lives of people.
Yes, hard work. You go out there, prepared to take up opportunities, implement whatever you're supposed to really go ahead to implement, and then you achieve the outcomes with the clear objectives as you set out.
Yeah, Professor, and I think one of the things that I believe really should help us to train us, whereby this lack will be following us and we'll be able as well to lay our hands on something and people see that, okay, this person is really lucky, is blessed by what we lay our hands on. And that is education.
Yeah.
In our first episode, you gave me something that I went ahead and did some research on it. You were comparing our curriculum here from senior 1 to senior 4. I think very, very soon we'll be going up senior 6.
Yes.
With that of South Africa. And you said South Africa, actually, they do have what they call outcome-based education.
Yes.
I went and did some research, Professor, and here are some few things that I found out. For you already, you know it, and if I make any mistake, please correct me. But
you should have got it right.
I landed on steps to implement the outcome-based education because someone was saying, could Professor help us to really highlight more or give more insight on the outcome-based education, and how can we practically have it here in our country? Something that I was pondering on and doing. When I did my research, I saw that one of the steps to implement the outcome-based education is you highlight institutional mission and vision, whereby I read and they're like, so there are institutions that, are there, but their mission and their vision and mission are not well defined, but they are educating your children. The second one was to establish program education objectives. You develop program learning outcomes. You create what they call a curriculum map, how you gonna go over your curriculum. You as well do what they call continuous improvement. You develop assessment strategies. And what I read was like, if you can do that, you're going to achieve the following. You're going to have a clear learning objectives. You're going to align with industry needs or what employers have been, trying to talk about. Like, okay, the people that come out of universities are not well trained. So when you implement the outcome-based education, you're able to align with the industry needs. It is a student-centered approach, and then there'll be assessment and evaluation. So that's what I read. I don't know if it is true, and I am with you who has been in South Africa. You have gone through this curriculum. You know how best you can help us to bridge the little gaps we have in our education here. Over to you, Professor. I've said a lot. Now I want to take some notes.
I must say you've really said it all. You've defined exactly what the OB is all about, outcomes-based. And you can really draw clear parallels between the OBE and the competence-based curriculum here in Uganda. And essentially, I would want to believe that's what the competence-based curriculum is geared towards achieving. Geared towards achieving the situation whereby the learner leads the learning process. and the teacher or your educator is a facilitator in this whole thing, you know. Education usually focuses more on practical approaches to learning rather than the theoretical and rote-based examination learning, you know. Now, you really pointed it out. When it really comes to the higher education context, you're talking of producing or having your outputs in the form of graduates that are responsive to the needs of the community out there, that are problem solvers, those that are out to solve problems, not coming into your firm or company to just ask you, what must I do? They must be in a position to think out of the box. They are problem solvers. There's a problem in the company. They should really be used to situations whereby they really need to think exactly how to solve a certain problem as problem solvers. So in this regard, what you need to produce from a higher education point of view are employment-ready students who are out to really, solve problems in the out there in the world, you know. In this regard, if you just really continue with the old education as we had it, you just teach students knowledge, you know, there is no practical approach to anything. Those are really not problem solvers at all. And those will continue creating problems in the world, you know. And that's why you hear, according to the study you've just pointed out or you've just outlined, that many of the students at one stage comparing the countries in the region, you find that at the time, most of the students or most of our graduates were not employment ready, which was really a problem. So you start asking yourself that how were they trained? What was the sort of curriculum? Was it far removed from the needs of the community out there? Was there a disconnect between what you teach, which would definitely would be considered outdated, and what industry, community out there needs? Yeah. So
you're bringing me to something, Prof. You mentioned it, but let us make the statistics speak for themselves. There is the University World News. They did a survey, and they entitled their survey that most East African graduates half-baked. I don't want to hear that. Half-baked.
That's what exactly I was coming to. Yeah, that now, for example, you are teaching according to what you desire, just to generate knowledge, you know, create knowledge, but there's no problem-solving element to that. So what we're trying to say, and what we need to do now, according to the case of South Africa, the OBE, the outcomes-based curriculum, or the competence-based curriculum in Uganda, is that the way we develop it is not in isolation. We need to develop it in partnership with the community out there, with the industry. We need to have partnerships with them in whatever we do. And that's why you see that right now, I think the situation must have changed from the time when that survey was done. Right?
Yeah, because they were saying that Uganda has the worst record, with at least 63% of graduates found to lack job market skills, followed by Tanzania 61, Burundi and Rwanda 55 and 52 respectively. And then Kenya was at 51, that their graduates were believed to be unfit for that job. Because what they were looking out for in this survey, Professor, was that they concluded that graduates lacked 1, employability skills, technical mastery, and basic work-related capabilities. They were looking at those 3. employability skills, technical mastery, and basic work related capability. And employers were always complaining.
Yeah. So the first question you would ask yourself that how did that come about? I would like to say at the time we studied at Makerere during our years, apart from doctors and engineers or veterinary medicine people, and also maybe agriculturists or people who did agriculture, there was no exposure at the time in terms of what you would expect out there in the field. And I'm very happy that fast forward, things have changed rapidly. Because I do realize that it's now a requirement in terms of any curriculum right now, that there must be a component of internship in whatever you do. You know, during our years, we could hear of internship relevant only to doctors or veterinary doctors and engineers as well going. But I don't even think that engineers also did have adequate exposure at the time. But now, an integral component of any course we do right now is internship. A person or student in their second or third year need to go out in the field to work the industry, get to know industry needs or society or any company, be it banking. They get to know what is required in that particular field. What are the new developments? What are the new technologies? So that exposure was lacking at the time. And on top of that, you heard of a problem we had in higher education when they talked about courses or programs that had expired.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was also like to do with the semantics. I don't think knowledge would expire, but there's a need to review that from time to time. And the requirement by National Council for Higher Education right now is that, okay, any program that is reviewed, it is done in partnership with, for example, industry, business out there, and so on. So you get to incorporate, you get to build in the needs of the community out there, business out there, industry, and so on. So that means that would make your program relevant to the needs or requirements of industry.
Professor, let's take an example of Mutesa One Royal University. You do have programs. You're the Vice Chancellor. And so when do you review your programs and do you do it probably when you feel want or there is a mandate from the National Council of Higher Education that you must do this after this period of time? Or you just say, okay, now I think we should review.
No. I think, it all starts from the level of lecture. And that's why we really always urge our lecturers to always keep improving themselves. Because when you do research, you do community work and so on, you discover a lot more. So you build whatever you've researched on, whatever needs you've identified in the community, you build that within your teaching, within your lectures, within your curriculum, as it were. And then that is one way of us revisiting and
so we start with the instructor of that particular course.
And I'm talking from my experience. I would go out there in the field. I do research work. I write research papers. I do breakthroughs and so on. But many a time, always depending on the level, I would incorporate what breakthrough I've made or what findings I've made in my teaching. And many a time I would go out with my students in the field to show them findings to do with, say, certain types of soils that are vulnerable to this and that. And they would find it quite so practical and very interesting. Then another side of review.
Before the other side of review, Professor, I want us to really understand you very well because you're sharing with us your experience and how can we really bridge this gap. Should we conclude on your first side of the lecturer or the instructor to be able to go out and research? If a lecturer in any institution does not, involve himself or bring out himself to go and do research, should we say is one of the reasons why we could be having half-baked graduates?
No, not really. Not really.
Yeah. I'm just curious. I just asking to know because if I'm being taught by someone
who is not
who is just
involved
there,
in
doesn't,
research.
yeah.
Absolutely. You would certainly expect maybe a poor quality, kind of lecturing and, products in the form of students.
Yeah.
But, not many of our lecturers are researchers per se. You see, it all goes with empowerment, and yes, and trying to empower them by way of giving them funding to improve themselves, do research and so on. But many of them are also upgrading themselves. They're improving themselves by undertaking further studies. Many of them are doing their PhDs. And I want to believe, I'm sure, many of them are building what they study into their teaching, which of course also improves the quality of our graduates. But then again, another way of upgrading or reviewing our programs is the mandatory one. We've got a regulatory frameworks. Our regulator, the National Council for Higher Education, stipulates that a course unit, or you call it a program, is valid for a given period of time. And it's mandatory that it's got to be reviewed within that period of time. Okay, and when the review happens, we get on board, we bring on board all stakeholders. Okay. We have stakeholder workshops. We go out into industry, business, and ask them what needs to be incorporated into the program. And then again, the students also give us very useful feedback. I told you this element that was lacking, that was confined only to like medicine and so on. But it's now cross-cutting. When students go out to industry, to business, for internships, they give us feedback that is very useful. And we encourage, and actually we ask for evidence of that evidence having been integrated or captured in the programs. So that's why I say that if that survey were to be done like now around these times, the picture must have changed. It should have changed quite a lot. Mm-hmm. And really, we also have an edge or an advantage over many other institutions, like the smaller the institution, or when an institution is still small, when I talk about small, I'm referring to student numbers, there's that advantage of individual attention, The students really do receive that, close attention from lecturers, when they are supervised in the field. That input they obtain from there definitely helps to improve the teaching and learning process in the lecture halls. And then at the end of the day, your product, that is the student, the graduate, goes out into the world of work with that exposure. And that's very important. That's why I say that if that survey were to be done now, the results would be totally different. Yeah, because we do what we call tracer studies as well. Whereby we get to know where our students go into the world of work. And also the feedback we get in the form of those internship programs. We get really a very high level of satisfaction from our partners in the industry and business and the community.
Yes. Yeah, you've said something. Yeah, they were, because that when that survey was done, I'm talking about close to 10 years ago, 2014. 11 years ago, and so they were saying that one of the things that they found out in our East African countries, the education system, is the quality of education that was, poor quality education that is being given to students. And they said it is due to the number of students that are being enrolled by these universities. And these universities, they don't say the truth that they are unable to handle them, but they just keep on bringing them on. And when you say that it is good to be in a university or to send your child to a university where you have sensed as a guardian, as a parent, that they are able to give attention to my son, to my daughter. And I think should even come down to primary, or to secondary. It's not an issue of you looking out for a place where there are big numbers. Sometimes they don't give them attention. It is the truth that has to be told.
I mean, it's natural. It follows accordingly. I mean, if you really do have a lecture hall whereby there are 1,400 business and management students, you just certainly expect attention to be minimal, individual attention to students will be minimal. Even when it comes to marking, these lecturers are also human beings. I mean, marking 1,400 scripts, and you think there'll be effective marking, you'd be kidding yourself. As a matter of fact.
Wow, you're saying something.
But otherwise, as going back to the point of that relevance to the needs of industry, business, and other communities, it's very, very important that everything we do is done in partnership with. I always give an example of industry. I'll give an example of Mutesa, the First Royal University, where I'm Vice Chancellor. We are always keen to get into partnership with business. And also businesses also, and the industry. They're also likewise keen to get into partnership with us. Take the example of engineering, for example. Always keep getting partners in industry. They have an interest to popularize their products as well. But they also now see the value in, teaching our students exactly how a certain product is done. Now, like when we do sign MOUs with them, so that when they go to work with them, they already know new advances in technology and so on. So much so that at this stage, the sort of partnership we have in them, they even feel they should even have some of their plants, like fertilizer manufacturing plants, emission reduction gadgets, done jointly with them. And already we're in advanced stages to do that. So that our students can have that exposure to new equipment. And then again, that also ends up benefiting the communities out there. Talk about the issue of organic fertilizers, for which we have partnerships with some business.
And as a country being an agricultural nation, we need to embrace that.
That's already benefiting our students, but it also does benefit the community when we do short courses in the local manufacture of organic fertilizers. The beneficiary out there is the community. But then the ranking, according to the studies, said at one stage, Kenya was higher, had a better position than the rest of the countries in the region. I would want to believe that ranking also goes with exposure and the level of economic development. At that time, you would really realize that, even getting placement, internship placement was a problem here in Uganda. You didn't have as many manufacturing industries. Industry was also very limited and so on. But these days, it's really rare to find a student who misses out on internship placement. The economy is growing. The Kenyan economy, of course, was much bigger then, and they didn't have problems with partnership and so on. But again, in Uganda, the Ugandan environment now, as I've said, industry also realizes the value in partnerships with what? With higher education. They also see that, of course, the product will get popularized, and at the same time, they also see that if they get a graduate that is employment ready, it's of mutual benefit. Doesn't benefit only the institution. They also realize that they were struggling, to have to train somebody on the job as if they have not been to class, to lectures at all. So that was the problem then. But now, right now, when we get into the competence-based curriculum here, which now is already taken root at O and A level, this again has also to be built within the way we teach at high school. So much so that skilling is key. In addition to whatever other course students are doing, we make sure that they also depart as our outputs, with some form of skill That's very, very important.
So should the skilling start with the heads of the institutions? How? Because I'm looking at the how we see, yes, we need it now. If we already have people who are, students who are coming from O-level, they are going to graduate in 6 years, they'll be, joining university. How do we start that, Professor? And who should initiate this?
This is really a stepwise process, because we start it at higher education.
Okay.
Then you lack the foundation. The foundation needs to be done at the high school level. And I'm happy the curriculum development, the National Curriculum Development Center has really undertaken this task quite well. Starting at O level, now the students really do enjoy teaching and learning. They really do realize that they are now they lead the learning process.
They are involved.
They are involved,
thing,
yes.
Actually.
And the hands-on approach to things, the practical approach to things also is interesting them quite a lot. At university, you can say, yes, there's also a need to build that in there. I said even last time that we are it's not something new to us at university. Because as we said already, internships are an integral element of our programs. And at the same time, the approach to whatever we do, especially with the practical courses like engineering, the hands-on approach is always the way to go. Students are always exposed to that. They have practical sessions. The same with your IT and many others. But when you talk about the competence-based curriculum, even your teacher out there who's going to teach economics, who's going to teach, say, religious studies, their approach also needs to be competence-based. And that's why you see that we also do hold workshops at our university in the area of curriculum, the competence-based curriculum, so that when our lecturers go out there as teachers or as our outputs, they need to know that the approach is really along those lines. They have to let students to be leaders. They perceive themselves as facilitators. They have a clear practical problem-solving approach to things. And that's really now the way they look at it. So it's not a preserve of only practical courses only, no. Even the theoretical ones must be, the whole context should be that of problem solving. Build scenarios and see how best you solve them. Community participation, so I'm now talking from the social sciences point of view. Community involvement in whatever they do. Community participation, and then problems get solved. That way, yes.
Wow, yeah, it's interesting to hear that as well at higher education, you as well have to think of the competence-based.
Yes, you have to. You have to. That's now we would be just having a holistic education all the way. And actually, we say it started at high school, but then even at your primary school now, it will be inevitable. That component of competence-based,
bottom to top.
Yes,
bottom to top. Now, Prof, we talked about the studies that were done 10 years ago and then currently, but the fact that we are still battling with, it I think is coming to 200 graduates that come out of universities in Uganda every year, but still we are battling with the issue of unemployment. What should we do to handle that, Professor?
It's really a serious problem. It's really a serious problem. But how do you solve that? Now, the approaches we're talking about right now are geared towards solving those problems.
So what should we do with those who are currently unemployed?
That's the thing. we like those who are already in the field that are unemployed. The way to go now is inevitable. Is retooling them. They need to be retrained and so on. But now solving the problem holistically right now is now we rest it on that approach of the competence-based curriculum now. How do we go about it? we already talked about skilling, problem solving, and on top of that, apart from problem solving, the practical approach to things is what is going to solve the unemployment problem. A graduate who go out there would be in position to create a job for him or herself rather than seeking a job. You know, you go out there with some skill already. You may seek a job in an area where, in an area which you studied, but you may not get it. And you could use your skill. You could use your skill to start a job somewhere which you can grow up. So, thinking out of the box, you become a job creator rather than a seeker. That is not a new, it's just been lip service, talking about job creators and job seekers. But if you don't create an enabling environment, or you do not empower people to create jobs, that is just a slogan, job seekers rather than creators. Even during our days at university, that talk was there. But where was the enabling environment? It was not in place. Right? But now the skilling we're talking about, the competence-based approach to things that's practical, you go out there and find our outputs starting their own jobs. In the South African context, I used to tell them that the unemployment problem in South Africa is a lot higher than in our least developed, in our African countries here. No, that's South Africa, north of the Sahara, so south of the Sahara. Reason being, your South African product just expects that they will have to go out there and work in industry, in business or something like that. There's no fallback position. That's the end of it, yes. But the unemployment in our country here is also contextual, must be looked at in some context, If really you are unemployed, many times there is a fallback position in Uganda. You may not even need to find yourself in an urban environment because there's a fallback position, for example, in the form of agriculture. And that's why we always urge our students that you must have an additional skill that is maybe related to agro-processing or something like that, adding value to certain product. And hence, you will not be just looking for a job. You can start your own job. You can go to the land and work on that, depending on the sort of skills that you do have. Your South African counterpart that doesn't have that opportunity. Because, well, for them, most of the land, if not all the land, was grabbed by the white counterpart. That's an apartheid problem they had. But here, yes, there's a broad spectrum of opportunities. And I would like to think, yes, the unemployment problem is there, but you find our people in terms of their creativity, which should again be enhanced more by the competence-based approach to teaching and learning. They become really more creative. They can create, which initially small jobs, which can have got great potential to grow. Yes. And with also the state programs like your PDM, which I do here and so on. If you really, we talked about, luck and so on, but you also need to prepare yourself for the luck. Be a go-getter out there. Be organized in a way. And you really have to have frameworks that are created and credible, in order to tap those opportunities. You organize yourselves in the form of circles and so on, and other organizations. And then, therefore, you can access those opportunities as they come up.
Yeah, I think you should be happy with what the president, in one of his recent speeches, actually this was the State of the Nation address, he talked about their priorities before their term elapses. One of the priorities was skilling the youth. He said a lot on that. He's like, we need to skill the youth, and I think the government is moving towards that because the president said it, because he had like 10 priorities, and one of them is,
Skilling, yes.
Yeah, it's skilling the youth.
And we are really serious partners in actualizing that as higher institutions of higher learning. The case of Mutesa, the first Royal University, which was built around engineering and other technical related areas. Skilling is at the core of what we of our teaching and learning. And of course, we would be one of the ripe grounds for such a seed to be sown by the programs the president is talking about. Yes.
Yeah, you're talking about that, but now I want you to draw a bigger picture for Uganda. People always have this tendency or thinking or perspective that if you finish high school, if it is a parent that has been educating her child or his child, they have the big names they think of. And if those big name institutions are not mentioned, and they think your child will not have joined university. It is a mindset issue, and I don't know, you're going to let me know how can we address that. It's the same that affects some of us when we come out, let's say, of Mutesa University, and we go to look for a job. I might be having the skills. I am holistically trained, well-grounded, but I'll be like, which university did you go to? Okay, we will call you.
Yeah.
How can we address that mindset issue to see that if someone is, coming, you shouldn't be coming from a big, as we call them, big name, and in quotes. So how can we address that, Professor?
No, those are the sort of stereotypes, or you're judging the book by the cover, which are falling away, fortunately.
Okay.
Really, students, many judged with an output, like a graduate, is judged on what they're capable of at the moment. That's what I've realized. The thing, the element, I'll go back to what we said about the internship programs. These, I think, have changed the face of our outputs, and then the perception industry out there and business have. So much so that, like, when our students go out there for internship programs, they meet their counterparts from other institutions, which are even much bigger, But in the period they are there for internships and so on, tells it all. The potential employer is already able to tell.
I need to keep this.
I need to keep this one. And I would like to tell you, many a time, for our students, like from Mutesa, the first Royal University, they have all along been a preference in terms of employment offers by our potential employers. Already they just get to realize, this student seems to have had good attention, individual attention from their lecturer. The other student seems to be coming from a big institution, but seems not to have had an opportunity to even ever meet their lecturer. They are able to tell that.
Yeah.
They have not been exposed to this and that. And as a result, many a time, the students that we send out for internships are retained. That feedback we've got.
That's a good
from
testimony.
Banks, they let us know. From the industry, like now, right now, giving an example of a recent report I've just received from our students who went, engineering students, electrical engineering. They went to work with the UPDF for their internship. All of them have been absorbed.
Yeah.
Because they're quite happy with the way
UPDF is having a lot of projects.
And it's quite strategic because now it's one of the biggest employers. But that tells it all. That tells all that perception, that stereotyping that, students from such and such an institution, therefore they're so big. No. Internship gives an opportunity to try out students' capability, and then you really make up your mind as to whether a student is employable or is more employable than the others.
Okay.
And that's what internships do bring out. The same with your teaching and learning. What teachers we have as graduates, when they go out there for their school practice, the feedback we've always got is, oh, these education students from TESA, they're very good. All of them are absorbed straight away at the expense of many others that we know that come from big institutions.
Okay.
So you're always at a disadvantage when you go to an institution whereby you are 800,000 plus in a class. Always at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
This is survival for the fittest. And I like the approach, for example, by Makerere University now to say that our focus is now going to be on research. And their intake is now going to focus more on research-oriented, programs, like your master's, PhD, and so on. And then the late undergrads get into it. And actually, they have stopped or they have discontinued certain programs to be taught by
these
other
other
universities.
institutions. Yeah.
And we still have a big deficit in terms of higher education, our education landscape here. Because the statistics we do have are that the enrollment in higher education in Uganda is still within the region of 4.6, 4.7, as opposed to your average of 7% in sub-Saharan Africa. Which tells you that, yes, university access in Uganda is still low. And the number of graduates we need in this country.
How come it's too low when we have over 50 universities?
Yes, that's what you think. But I mean, you may have so many universities, but the question is access is still a problem. You find that many students there who are, worthy of going to university, but have not joined university for many reasons. It could be financial, could be to many other reasons. One needs to redo that survey and find out why the enrollment, higher education enrollment
and we
is
have
still
many
low.
institutions.
Yeah.
Okay, finally, Professor, as we sign out from this second episode, recently the Minister of Education, through the Minister of State for Primary Education, came up and gave guidelines of the early learning classroom, how it should look like. And they said at least each classroom in primary, in nursery, should have 25 students. And this should be taught by 2 teachers. Now, let me jump. I'll get a headmaster for primary. I'll get a headmaster for secondary. Let me jump to university. According to you, as we sign out, how many students should be in a lecture room? Now we are talking about lecture. In a lecture room. And how many teachers should be taught by those in a lecture room?
Now, that's a very good question. I don't think the answer should be really cross-cutting. That will be program specific.
Okay.
In the sense that there are really academic programs that are resource intensive. And that's why even our regulator, the National Council for Higher Education, says, okay, we've approved such and such a program, but the capping is so much. This is the maximum number of students to be admitted.
Oh.
So you are allowed to teach a certain program in engineering. They come look at what equipment, the number of equipment you have, say number of instruments and so on. And they say the capacity here should be so many, So therefore, that's why I say really that the number of students in a given lecture room should be dependent on the program. It should be program specific, if you will. But that notwithstanding, even purely theoretical courses, it's not desirable to have a class of beyond 600 and all that, yes. It compromises the quality of the teaching and learning process. It does. So, for institutions like ours, like at Mutesa, the first Royal University, the way the situation has panned out has shaped itself desirably in the sense that, okay, our numbers are not big, You may have a class of about 30, at most 50. Okay, there are some times when we have to bring them together in cross-cutting programs.
Okay.
Doing
And then
skills
they can be 80,
they can
100.
be 80, yes. Your areas like say computer literacy, which is compulsory at first year. You have writing skills. You also decide to combine them, say like accounting skills, general accounting. Then they get combined. But still, the biggest number you get there will be about 100, 120, and they will be in at a venue that is even adequate to accommodate them. Yes, okay. Yeah. So it varies across programs. Yeah.
Well, Professor, we say thank you so much for giving us time to talk about now the higher education and some of the things that really need to be worked on. And I think it is a call to the ministry and as well the government, and then you, the key stakeholder, who is the parent.
Yeah.
Make sure that you pay keen attention to this information, because it is you who pays the money to educate your children.
Yes.
And when they come out, they're unable to do anything. They come back to you, Daddy, I need this, and I gave you education. And he's like, Dad, the education you gave me, yes, I'm unable to get anything out of it. So please, Daddy, foot the bill.
True. But partnership is key.
Partnership is key as well.
Partnership with the industry, business, out there. Higher education must never be detached from. There mustn't be a disconnect from the real world.
Okay.
And the way to really achieve that connection is that partnership. Yes.
Well, we sign out from now. You've heard it from Professor Vincent Kakembo, the Vice Chancellor of Mutesa One Royal University. If God allows, we will have him for the last episode, and he will be sharing with us now how can we, he will be sharing with us the other Uganda. Let me not pop my nose into that. The other Uganda he would love to see. My name is Mlanzi. For now, we sign out and say bye-bye.